Before you were 10 years old, someone handed you a complete set of rules about money. Nobody sat you down. Nobody explained them. You absorbed them from the tone of voice at the kitchen table, from what got argued about after the lights went out, from whether the word money came with tension or with ease. You never agreed to a single one of those rules, and you are still running every one of them today. Your spending is not random. It is obedient. It is following instructions you were given a very long time ago by people who got their own instructions the same way. Today we go and read them. Here is the plan. First, I will show you where this sits on the loop. This is the spend stop, the one that fires before you have consciously decided anything. Then 6 shifts. 1. You were handed a money operating system, and you installed it before you could question it. 2. There are 4 of these scripts that show up again and again, and each one buys something different on credit. 3. They are invisible because they do not feel like rules. They feel like your personality. 4. A scarcity script survives abundance, which is why people who grew up with nothing often cannot stop spending once they have something. 5. 2 people can run 2 completely different operating systems off one balance sheet, and that is what money fights actually are. And 6. Naming the script demotes it from identity to habit, and habits are editable. Then one thing to do this week. Go back to the loop. Earn, spend, owe, stress, spend again. Last time we looked at the whole circle. Today we are standing on one stop, spend. And I want to be precise about which part of spending, because this is not the part where you weigh options and choose. This is the part before that, the split second where the decision is already made and your conscious mind arrives afterwards to explain it. That is where a script lives. A script is a rule about money that runs automatically, without asking you, because it was installed before you had the ability to argue with it. You do not experience it as a rule. You experience it as obvious, as just how money works. That feeling of obviousness is the tell. Put the 2 panels up again. On the left, the math. Solved, green check, 10 minutes. On the right, the tangle. Today I am writing one specific thing into that right-hand panel, the rules you did not choose. And notice how completely invisible this is to the left panel. No spreadsheet has a cell for what my family believed about money. No payoff calculator asks whether spending was how affection got expressed in your house, or whether money was the thing that got shouted about. Yet that is doing more work on your balance than the interest rate is. This is what I mean by the gap. The math treats you as a person deciding. The script decided before you got there. Shift 1. You inherited a money operating system, and you installed it before you were old enough to read the terms. Think about what a small child actually observes. They do not understand income or interest. What they absorb is atmosphere. Was money a topic that made the room go quiet? Did a purchase arrive with joy or with a look between the adults? Was there a drawer full of unopened letters nobody talked about? Did generosity get praised, or did it get treated as reckless? None of that is a lesson anyone intended to teach. It is all soaked up sideways. And here is why it matters so much. A rule you absorb before you can evaluate it does not get filed with your other opinions. It gets filed as reality. Opinions can be argued with. Reality cannot. You just act on it. So an adult can hold a finance degree, understand compound interest completely, and still feel a genuine spike of anxiety at the sight of a savings account with money sitting in it doing nothing. Because somewhere back there, they absorbed the rule that money sitting still is money about to be taken. That is not ignorance. The knowledge and the script live in different parts of the building, and in a fast moment, the script gets there first, every single time. Shift 2. There are 4 of these scripts that come up again and again, and each one buys something different on credit. The first is avoidance. Money is uncomfortable, slightly shameful, not to be discussed. This is the person who does not open the statements, and you already know from the last episode where that goes. Avoidance does not spend wildly. It spends by not looking, and the leak runs for years. The second is worship. More money will fix it, whatever it is. This one is optimistic and exhausting, and it borrows against a future where the number is finally big enough, which is a future that keeps moving. The third is status. Money shows people who I am. This one buys the visible thing, the car on the drive, the round of drinks, the version of the item that other people will notice. Status spending is the most expensive script because it is not satisfied by the object at all. It is satisfied by being seen with it, and that needs topping up. The fourth is vigilance. Never let anyone know what you have, never feel safe, never quite spend. This is the only script that looks responsible from the outside, and it still costs you in a life shrunk down small enough to feel safe. Most people are a blend of two. Notice which two just made you uncomfortable. And notice something else. Not one of those four is about arithmetic. Avoidance is not bad at maths. Status is not bad at maths. Every one of them is a rule about what money is for. Safety, proof, evidence, relief. And once money has a job that is not buy this specific thing, the spending stops being about the specific thing entirely. That is why two people on identical incomes with identical bills can end a year in completely different places. They were never running the same program. Shift 3. Scripts are invisible, and the reason they are invisible is that they do not feel like rules. They feel like personality. Listen to how people describe their own money behavior. I'm just a generous person. I'm not really a saver. I just like nice things. I'm careful. That's how I am. Every one of those sentences is doing something sneaky. It takes a behavior, a thing that happens, that has a trigger, that could happen differently, and relabels it as an identity, a fixed fact about who you are, and an identity is not something you troubleshoot. Nobody debugs their personality. So the behavior becomes untouchable, protected behind the word just. That word is worth listening for. I just like nice things is almost always the end of a conversation that was about to get useful. Here is the test that cuts through it. Ask why. Why do you like nice things? Not to catch yourself out, genuinely. And keep asking gently about 3 times. Almost everybody hits something underneath that is not about the things at all. It is about being taken seriously, or about never wanting to feel like the kid with the wrong shoes again, or about proving something to someone who is not even in the room anymore. That thing at the bottom is the script. The nice things were just what it was buying, and here is why this is worth the mild discomfort of doing it. As long as the behavior is labeled personality, every strategy you try has to fight you. Budgets become a referendum on who you are, and you will lose that referendum because people defend their identity far harder than they defend a spreadsheet. Relabel the same behavior as a rule you picked up, and suddenly there is nothing to defend. You are not changing yourself. You are updating a setting. Those two feel completely different from the inside, and only one of them is survivable for more than a month. Shift 4, and this is the cruelest one. A scarcity script survives abundance. You would expect growing up without money to produce a careful adult. Sometimes it does, but remarkably often it produces the opposite. The person who grew up with nothing and now cannot stop spending and who feels completely baffled by themselves. Here is the mechanism, and it is not a character flaw. If you grow up in a house where money vanishes, where anything spare gets taken by an emergency or a bill or somebody else's crisis, then your nervous system learns a rule that was completely correct at the time. Money does not stay. Money is temporary. And if money is temporary, then the smart move is to convert it into something real while you still have it. Spending it is not reckless under that rule. Spending it is rational. You are locking in value before it evaporates. Now that person grows up, earns well, and the old rule is still installed. So a full account does not feel like safety, it feels like a countdown. And the fastest way to stop the countdown is to spend it. There is a second version too, the deprivation rebound, where every purchase is quietly settling a debt owed to a younger version of you who went without. That is a debt no amount of money can actually settle, because the person it is owed to is not around to receive it. Naming this out loud is the entire treatment, because a rule that made sense at 8 years old can finally be looked at and retired at 35. Shift 5. Two people can run two entirely different operating systems off one balance sheet, and that is what money fights actually are. Picture a household where one person runs vigilance and the other runs status. To the vigilant one, an unplanned purchase is not a purchase. It is a breach of safety, and it produces genuine fear. To the status one, being told no about that purchase is not a budget decision. It is being told they are not allowed to be who they are. Both of those reactions are enormous, and neither is about the money. So they have the argument about the money, because that is the thing on the table, and they have it again next month and again, and it never resolves, because they keep negotiating over the receipt instead of over the rule. Here is what changes it. Not a shared spreadsheet. They usually already have one. What changes it is each person being able to say what money meant in the house they grew up in. That conversation is uncomfortable for about 10 minutes, and then it reorganizes everything. Because the moment you can see the other person's script, their reaction stops looking irrational and starts looking like a person protecting something, and you cannot compromise with someone whose behavior you think is insane. You can absolutely compromise with someone whose rule you understand. There is a version of this you can run on your own, too, if you are the only adult in the house. The other operating system in the argument might be a past version of you, the one who set up the direct debits, or who decided years ago what kind of person you were going to be about money. You are still negotiating with them. They are just not in the room to defend themselves. Shift 6. Naming the script demotes it from identity to habit. And that demotion is the whole game. Follow the chain. As long as the rule is invisible, it is simply how the world is, and there is nothing to do about how the world is. Once you can say it out loud, "In my house, money meant safety and there was never enough of it," it stops being the world and becomes a sentence, and a sentence has an author. It came from a specific place, at a specific time, in specific conditions that were probably real. That is important. I am not telling you the rule was stupid. It was usually accurate. The rule that money does not stay was true in that house. It is just no longer true in yours, and nobody ever went back and updated it. That is, all this is, an outdated rule that never got a review. So you review it. You ask what the rule is, whether it was true then, whether it is true now, and what you would do differently if it were not running. You do not have to delete it. Honestly, you cannot delete it, but you can notice it firing, which introduces a gap between the rule and the action. And everything in this series happens inside that gap. That is what editable means. Not gone, just no longer automatic. So here is the thing to do this week, and it takes about 5 minutes. Write down the sentence about money you heard most as a child. Not the wisest one, the most repeated one, the one in someone else's voice. We can't afford it. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't tell anyone what we have. You get what you pay for. There's always more where that came from. Write it exactly as you heard it. Then underneath, write 2 things. First, was it true? In that house? At that time? Be fair. Usually the answer is yes, and it matters that you say so, because this is not an exercise in blaming anyone. Second, is it true in your life right now? That is the whole thing. That single question is the review that never happened. Most people find one sentence that was completely accurate in 1990-something and is quietly costing them money today. And if you want the advanced version, add one more line. What does this rule make me do with money that I would not otherwise do? That is the behavior, not your personality. A behavior, with an author and a date, which means it can be changed. And if you live with someone, Ask them for their sentence too, and just listen to it, without solving anything. So tell me in the comments, what was the sentence in your house? I would genuinely like to read them because people are always surprised how many others heard the exact same one. This is education, not financial credit or legal advice, just an honest look at how this works. Next time we take on the mechanism that eats every raise you will ever get, lifestyle creep. And I am going to show you why it is not weakness and not vanity, but an actual ratchet, a device with one-way teeth that clicks up easily and physically cannot click back. Once you have seen the teeth, you cannot unsee them. I will see you there.